Our first Pioneer Award recipient this year is somebody that actually goes back to the very beginning of motorsports in this area. Not many of you will recognize his name because he passed away in 1964, and he was only 42 years old. But when I describe to you what his life was like in those 42 years, you'll understand why he probably passed away so quickly. I know when I was a kid, I was just about as car crazy as you could be, and I was hearing stories about a drag strip in Chester, South Carolina, that seemed like every week or two in the summer, some kids around would be talking about what happened at Chester that weekend. And it would always be something like, well, Don Garlitz was there, or the Arfons brothers, you know, and we were seeing their cars and names in magazines, Hot Rod and some other ones. And then there was also the custom car show in Charlotte back in the 50s. Chester opened in 1956, and it was under the direction of the International Timing Association, which was created to be an east of the Mississippi sanctioning body to compete with NHRA on the West Coast. And under the umbrella of the International Timing Association was the Charlotte Custom Car Show. And unfortunately, I was too young in the 50s. I got my driver's license in 1960. So I was too young, which that's the year that Chester Drag Strip closed, was in 1960. But Bob Osiecki was the guy that founded Chester Drag Strip, and the races there, I'm sure that Buddy and some of the other guys that was racing back then probably competed there, and it was definitely one of the best drag strips in the United States because it was an old Air Force base, World War II Air Force base, and it had 3 5,000-foot drag strips, if you want to call them that. Of course, Bob decided which one he wanted to use. But prior to that, he was racing sportsman cars in Atlanta, started making his own aluminum flatheads, which were very unique because they had water outlets built into the heads, which helped the heating problems with flatheads. In 1949, he was one of the founding members of NASCAR, was very good friends with Bill France Sr. And when they were deciding what they were going to call this new organization, they came up with the National Stock Car Racing Association, which is the initials for that is NSCRA. And it's said that Bob Osiecki was one that brought it up by changing those words around a little bit. You'll come up with NASCAR, which has car in the title. So he very well could be the person that's responsible for that name being NASCAR rather than the letters NSCRA. Bob was heavily involved in NASCAR racing. He ran the flying mile at Daytona each year. He went to Bonneville. He had his own timing equipment company, the International Timing Association had timing equipment that competed with Krondek. But in all these years that Bob was heavily involved in these different aspects of racing, his wife was raising 5 children, and Bob was gone a lot. His wife, I can only imagine what she went through trying to support what he was doing, which she did very much. and also trying to raise those 5 kids. And Bob finally, in 1964, after setting a new indoor closed course record at Daytona in 1961 with what he called Mad Dog 4, he won $10,000 for being the first to run a lap speed of 180 at Daytona. And Bill Francis put up $10,000 for anybody that could do it. And the really interesting thing about that was that Bob had hired several NASCAR drivers to drive that car. And they got up into the 170 mile an hour bracket and would spin out. And they didn't want any more of that car. And Bob remembered this guy that ran at Chester Drag Strip, called him up, guy's name was Art Malone, and asked him if he would try driving that car. And Art was like 25 years old, had a new kid, and needed the money. He was going to get $2,500 of the $10,000 if he did break the record. So Art ran 181 with that car, and probably Bill Francis has never been happier paying somebody $10,000 to do that, because it really put Daytona Speedway on the map worldwide. But it's really ironic that when I started doing researching on drag racing around in the Carolinas about 30 years ago, I really never heard of Bob Osiecki's name. I had known of the accomplishments. I knew of Chester. I knew of custom car shows in Charlotte, which he had other custom car shows in Atlanta, as far west as Phoenix. He was really spread out. There's nobody that I can think of that did more for motorsports in the Carolinas, especially, than Bob Osiecki. And I'm pleased to have Bob's son, Tom Osiecki, come and accept this award for his father.
Say a word?
Yeah, please.
Right here, please. Thank you, Frank. Members of the board. It's kind of tough. I was 10 when my dad passed, so a lot of the things he had done, I really had and I wasn't old enough before most of his really earliest endeavors into racing. He started with boat racing in New Jersey, went to Atlanta. From what I understand, he built some engines for some moonshiners. Smokey Unick and he were sort of competing with each other on that. NASCAR, really he was there at the beginning of NASCAR. Had a number of drivers. He's a pioneer, I guess. It's not necessarily as much as what you do as who you're doing it with that you're able to succeed. Ralph Earnhardt drove for him, Darrell Derringer. Never won a race, but he was still able to pull some of the competitors that were running up front to run in his cars. They were supposed to be pretty reliable. International Timing Association, he developed the electronic eye timing system back when everybody was still using stopwatches. Drag racing, you know, he started in '56 and '60 it was over. So '56 I was 3. So I don't really have a lot of stories to tell. Probably one of the strongest memories I have is the outhouses. How bad they smelled. But meeting Frank, it was really nice. We pulled out some of the old pictures. My dad, we were able to find over 5 decades since he passed. My mom moved, families moved. We've got some really nice memories that we still have, but a lot of that stuff's gone now. So this is a great honor. I appreciate the recognition. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for Frank. He chased me down and let me know what was going on, encouraged me to come. I appreciate that. Hearing y'all's stories is fascinating. I'm surprised sometimes how much I do remember when I'm reminded of some of the names and some of the events. And I think the pioneering spirit was passed down to his kids. His first child, his daughter Ann, worked with the space shuttle program when they were developing that, and ended up as a representative for the astronauts when they weren't able to attend meetings that they really needed to be at. She would actually go in and present their issues, and she really loved that. Unfortunately, she passed a few years ago. My oldest son, my brother Robert, helped develop dual fuel vehicles for Stuart Stevens down in Texas. And so it's been passed. My daughter Samantha is here with me, and she spent 4 years in art school learning how to take pictures. So I think she may experience some of the highs and lows of the incomes that drag racers and racers in general have to deal with. But I'm very honored, the family's very honored.